Good afternoon. I'm Michael Malice, and let that be your welcome for the next hour. My guest today is Juanita Broaddrick. Now, Juanita, you're in Arkansas. I'm here in
Yes.
Brooklyn. So, as someone who's lived in Brooklyn all his life, and I don't often get to talk to older Southern women, is it okay if I call you Miss Juanita, like they do in the
Oh,
South?
yes.
Okay,
Absolutely.
so Miss Juanita, your claim to fame is that you were the victim of sexual assault by President Clinton during his campaign for governor or attorney general.
He was Attorney General running for governor.
And this was in
1978.
and here's how I found out about you, as did most of America. And let me ask you this. Is it weird for you that the thing that people, like when you meet people, right, and they know your name, that's the first thing that comes to mind? Is that something that is kind of disturbing?
Oh, it is. And that's why when I wrote my book, I said, I'm more than a 30-minute rape by Bill Clinton. And that's why I told about my whole life as a successful businesswoman and a registered nurse.
Yeah. So I mean, it's jarring. And
Yeah.
I first heard about you because I remember during the Clinton impeachment trial, and we'll talk a lot about that because there's so much misinformation at the time
Yeah.
and to this day that's been unpacked. Thankfully, now we're revisiting it, and I think some people are fixing those past mistakes. You were interviewed, and you came forward with a very detailed, very long, very credible account of your assault. You weren't some conservative Republican hatchet woman. You were working at his campaign, for Christ, number one.
I know.
Nor were you saying that you had a kid by him, secret affair, like this Michael Jackson woman. This was one specific incident. So can you tell us how they first found out about you? This was NBC, correct?
Right. I had an ongoing conversation with Lisa Myers for almost a year before I agreed to do the NBC Dateline interview. But prior to that, I had told, 5 people, the woman who found me right after the rape, and 4 other people. And one of these people probably told somebody else, and that person was Philip Yoakum. Philip Yoakum was a gentleman who also was involved in nursing homes, and he was a very close friend of Sheffield Nelson. Well, Sheffield Nelson, do you recall that name?
No, I don't.
Okay, he ran against Bill Clinton for governor and lost and was a huge enemy of Bill Clinton. They got together, came to my nursing home, tried to get me to come forward. They had heard about the rape, and I told them, no, leave me alone. And so they wrote a letter to several newspapers and said they knew what had happened to me from certain sources, and that I had been bought off by the Clinton campaign to stay quiet. So that was the first thing that really came up.
Wait, so this is the
probably
late
in
90s.
Yeah, well, no, early 90s. This
So-
is when this letter was written.
Okay. So
Then a lot of people latched onto that. And so that was one of the main reasons that I came forward with Lisa, is to say, no, I was not bought off.
So this is over a decade since the assault, and you're just having a regular day at work. Already, it's obviously a traumatic incident, which we'll get to in a bit. But what's that like when you're just trying to get through your day? Nursing, being a nurse is not fun. It's tough. Obviously, it's intense work
No.
emotionally. So someone comes in and revisits this. What did that feel like?
Oh, it was terrible. I thought it had been kept, pretty secret. People knew, my friends that I'd told, they knew I didn't want to come forward. I mean, Bill Clinton, as the Attorney General and the governor, regulated my businesses. He could have shut me down at a moment's notice. So that was absolutely frightening to me. And also just the shame of it all. I blamed myself for years for letting that monster come to my room. But I know now it wasn't my fault.
But I mean, there was still that. It must have been a couple of weeks of terror where it's like now not only do you have to live through what you lived through before, it's like now you're having a financial possible crisis because the vindictiveness of the
right.
Clintons is very well known, I'm sure, in Arkansas.
Oh, exactly. And when I was approached by the Paula Jones investigators, they came to my front porch one day in 1998. Their name was Rick and Beverly Lambert, and they are the parents of Miranda Lambert, the country singer.
Yeah.
But anyway, they had their own little investigation firm and were hired by the Jones attorneys. They come to my front porch, and I walk out on the porch and talk to them, trying to convince me to come forward in the Paula Jones suit. And I told them in so many words, leave me alone. I do not want to get into this. I've seen what happens when women accuse Bill Clinton of sexual crimes. I said, no, I won't do that. Well, they recorded my conversation and never told me. The transcript is in my book, and it's also on the internet. And they took this back to the Jones attorneys. And that's when I became Jane Doe number 5 in the Paula Jones suit.
And that's the thing with the Paula Jones stuff and later Ken Starr, there were several Jane Does. I mean, have they all been identified now?
I don't know.
I don't think they have.
I think I was just knew the horror of being Jane Doe number 5. It was awful. And
then every day you have to wonder, now that I'm on the radar, is the press going to find me, or are the Clintons going to find me, right? Was that your thinking?
Oh, yes. I was fearful. You know, I was followed around, and it was mostly by reporters as far as I knew. But when the Paula Jones pulled me into that case, that's when I was so indignant that they would do this against my will. And that's when I first lied about it and said, no, nothing happened. And Michael, I walked away from that deposition thinking, okay, that's it. Maybe these people will leave me alone now and let me go about my own life. But that didn't happen. We all know that then here comes Ken Starr. The Paula Jones attorneys notified Ken Starr about the transcript and also made the inference that I had been bought off.
Yeah, so thanks to the internet, people now can attack you directly like they couldn't in the 90s. So it's funny how, you know, I'm sure you played telephone when you were younger, where you whisper in someone's ear and they whisper in someone's ear and they whisper in someone's ear, and by the end the story gets all garbled. So one of the things that I saw is people said, well, she's lying because twice she said under oath that nothing had happened. So that is technically true. Right. Yeah, that is true. And then what was so strange about this encounter with the House Judiciary Committee and the FBI was that there was a lady present there. Her name was Diane Woznicki. She worked for Dave Shippers. He was the lead investigator on the attorney that was the lead investigator on the impeachment. And she and I made eye contact. And we got together after that. She had worked as a police sergeant on the Chicago police force with rape victims. And I finally spilled my guts to her. And that gets back to independent counsel. I said, yes, go ahead and tell them what happened. So that's when I told the truth. What made you change your mind?
Being able to talk to somebody I didn't know that was so compassionate and said, it's going to be okay. You know, we'll walk you through this. And it just felt good to tell the truth to someone. Yeah. So, and also my son came to me and said, Mom, he's an attorney. And he said, Mom, the Paula Jones suit was civil. And he said, this is federal and this is serious. I had told him when he was about 19, and he said, you've got to go ahead and come clean and tell the truth. So that's what I did. So let's go back to that night. And I feel it's weird for me to ask you about this, because I mean, even though he's told it many times, because in a sense, it's asking you to relive a trauma. But are you at a point where if you talk about it, it's something you feel comfortable talking about, or is it still disturbing to discuss? The actual rape is disturbing, but as far as leading up to it, no. And it wasn't night. It was 8 or 8:30 in the morning. Oh my gosh. Okay, so why did you sign on for his campaign to begin with? What was Bill Clinton like in the reputation in Arkansas in the late 70s? Oh, it was so good and it was exciting. Some of my friends came to me and said, we're going down to volunteer for the Bill Clinton governor campaign. They said, you want to go? And I thought, oh, yeah, I might as well. So I went down, and it was interesting. The people presented it so well. So all of us signed up to be volunteers. I would go around in the evening with my little son, and he thought it was so great to hammer in yard signs and do things like that. So I did this for approximately 3 weeks prior to meeting Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton's campaign office in Little Rock called me one day after I'd been volunteering for a few weeks and asked if he could come to my nursing home. He was going to be in the area doing a campaign tour, and could he make a stop by my nursing home? And yes, I thought that was just excellent. That was great. And so we got ready for the day that he came. We all had on our little Clinton for Governor buttons. He comes into the nursing home with all of his entourage. And we have that photo op that's on the front of my book.
Yeah.
And then after the photo op, he walks over to me, starts conversing. And it's true. He was so charismatic. He never lost eye contact with you when he talked to you. You felt like you were the only person in the room. And Michael, that's when I thought, nursing homes in Arkansas are struggling, and this man can help. And I began to tell him about all of the things that were going on, about the low reimbursement rate. I was a registered nurse, and I wanted to take care of my patients to the best of my ability, but it would take more money than we were getting at the time. But anyway, when I talked to him about that, he said, oh, yes, we need to talk about that. And he said, are you ever in Little Rock? And I said, yes, I'll be there in about 3 weeks. And he said, well, call my campaign office and bring your information, and let's get together and talk about it.
Wait, let me ask you something. Let me ask you quick. People often talk about this mythical Bill Clinton charisma. Is this something you have ever met in somebody else? Was it that off the charts, or was it, just charismatic but not?
It was off the charts. It was off the charts. He was so engaging. He knew exactly what he was doing, but I didn't.
Right.
He was so engaging.
So have you ever met anyone else who has that air of charisma about them since?
No.
Oh, so it really is that kind of extreme.
Right. But I mean, we were sort of just in awe that he would come to my nursing home, and then that he would actually want to speak to me about our problems. So I told him, we'll be down there in about 3 weeks. I'm bringing my director of nursing, and we're coming down. He said, well, just call my campaign office when you get here, and let's make a point to get together. So on April the 24th, 1978, my nurse and I drive to Little Rock. The next morning when we get up, we call his campaign headquarters, and the lady gives me a phone number to call. So I call that number. He answers the phone almost immediately, and he says, and I tell him, I say, I'm here. I brought the information. Can we talk to you today? I said, we have an hour for lunch. And he said, no, I'm not going to be in my office today. He said, why don't I come to your hotel now and we can talk about it? And I thought, man, that's great. I won't have to drive clear across town, and he'll come over here. So he said, I'll call you and we'll meet in the hotel coffee shop, the Camelot coffee shop. He said, I'll call you when I get there so you can come down.
And you didn't think anything of it, because this is clearly a professional relationship talking about political issues. And it's just like a job. If someone had a job interview and said, hey, let me follow up with your job, meet me at the coffee shop, the hotel, you're not going to think this is going anywhere. You think, okay, we're already discussing business. This is going to, and politics, and something that will help my work. Yeah. Okay. So that's the context.
I was excited that, I may get some help. So anyway, I turned to Norman. I say, you go on to the meeting, and when I finish in the coffee shop, I'll come right on to the meeting. So she leaves, goes downstairs to the meeting, and I wait in the room for his call that he's here. I probably should have, on second thought, should have just gone on down and waited. But I did like he said. I waited in the room until he got there. He calls my room, and he says, Juanita, there's just so many people down here. It's crowded, and there's even reporters. Can we just talk about this in your room and have coffee there? And I'm sure it sort of took me back a little bit. I'd never been alone in a hotel room with a man I didn't know. And I said, okay. I mean, he was the attorney general. So Norma
Wait,
leaves.
let me ask you quickly.
I,
So, do you think
yeah.
at that point, obviously you don't know what someone else is thinking. Do you think he gave a damn about the nursing homes, or do you think this was just his way to get into your hotel room by yourself?
It's just his way to get into
Okay.
my hotel room. Yeah, I have absolutely no doubt now.
Okay.
Absolutely none. Okay, I order coffee to the room. And as soon as they leave, it makes me wonder if he was standing out in the hallway waiting for those people to leave so they wouldn't see him.
Oh, wow.
Almost as soon as they leave, he knocks on the door. And I go to the door, and Michael, there he stands in a dimly lit hallway with dark sunglasses on.
Oh.
And I remember that being a little wearisome, But anyway, I usher him on in. He walks in,
Yeah, wait,
takes off his sunglasses.
it's dimly lit. It's during the. I mean, there's no reason for sunglasses in a hallway that's dark, unless you're trying to cover
I
yourself. Right.
know.
Okay. So it was clearly he had some
But
ulterior.
I heard later after that he went everywhere in his calls or whatever he was doing with sunglasses on. He
Okay.
wore them all the time.
Okay.
So anyway, he comes in, takes off his sunglasses, lays his coat across the chair. And so I go to the table. It's just a large round table over by the window. And he walks around from me to the other side of the table by the bed. And so I started to pour the coffee. And he says, come here just a minute. I want to show you this little building down here. And so I stop what I'm doing and I walk around to that side of the table. And he starts to point to a little building down below on the Arkansas River. And it was a little old building that was in very much disrepair. And he said, but as he pointed, Michael, he puts his arm around me, sort of around my shoulder to
Yeah.
point at it. And I sort of back up from him. But as I do, he's explaining it's an old 1800 jailhouse that he wants to restore when he becomes governor. So I just nod or say, okay, and start to walk back around the table to where my information in the coffee
Wait,
is.
hold on, hold on. So when he's telling you about this, were you finding it interesting at all, or you were like, "Why are you telling me this?"
No, I was scared because he put
Okay.
his arm around my
Oh, I
shoulder.
see. Okay, now he broke that
Yeah.
physical contact barrier. So now the energy has kind of shifted.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm backing up. So I start to walk around the table and away from his arm, and that's when he grabs me and pulls me back. And then I tell him, no, 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 I don't want that at all. And that's when I try to go around again, and that's when he grabs me and tries to start kissing me. And then that's probably the first time I started screaming or
Okay.
yelling. And then he starts pushing me backwards to the bed, and I'm
Wait, hold
screaming
on. Hold a
again.
second. Which was more disturbing, the fact that you're physically being grabbed, or psychologically that it has shifted so quickly from a business meeting, nursing home to I'm under attack?
All of the
Okay.
above. I felt like I was falling backwards as he was pushing me. And then when he finally pushed me onto the bed, he's tearing at my clothing. I mean, the descriptions in my book, it was the most frightening thing in the world. And I start to scream again. And that's when he's on top of me and he's biting on my upper lip. Every time I let out a whimper or a yell, he begins to bite on my upper lip. And it's not just little bites, it's big bites. And it scared me to death. And I thought, I can't breathe. He's biting on my lip. I was scared to death.
Yes.
I thought I was going to die.
Yes.
I thought death.
Psychologically, it must be the same adrenaline response as you don't know if you're getting assaulted or murdered. Like you don't know what's going to happen.
Exactly. And I couldn't grasp what was happening at all. And then after the assault, I was just like a body. I sat up on the side of the bed and I started crying. I was crying during the whole time and telling him no. But here I am trying to gather the covers around my exposed body, and he just gets up and he sort of straightens himself, and he's looking at me, and he's bewildered, he's frustrated, and I'm just sobbing. My lip is hurting, and I feel my lip, and it's swollen. I mean, it's huge. And he just looks at me and he says the most strange thing. He says, "Don't worry, I'm sterile. I had mumps when I was a kid." And I just look at him and I think, my God, you've just raped me. I'm sitting here and I'm devastated. And why did you say that to me? And then he just sort of shakes it off and puts on his suit coat and puts on his sunglasses. And then he just sort of motions to my mouth and he says, "You'd better put some ice on that," and walks out the door.
Now, go ahead.
Not even, it was probably 30 minutes at 8 or 8:30 in the morning. And there I sat in shock. And as soon as that door shuts, I rushed to it and I locked it because I felt like, my God, is somebody going to come in and get rid of the body?
Michael Malice here. I want to tell you guys about Simple Habit. What's Simple Habit? It's an amazing 5-minute meditation app to help busy people stress less, achieve more, and live better. You get an iOS, you get on Android, you get on the web. It's an app for daily stress release. And guess what? They won the 2018 Google Play Award for Best Wellbeing App. And here's how it works. It takes 5 minutes a day to improve your life through improved focus. They have meditation guides by the world's best teachers. You can go with mindfulness experts at Google's on one end or former monks on the other, whatever works for you. And these guided meditations work for specific symptoms: sleep, stress, anxiety, depression, or for specific life situations, help you relax and calm down. You got to wake up, you got a tough day at work, you got to commute. That stresses me out. You know what that's like on the MTA. I don't know how you people do it every day. So here are some examples that they can help you out specifically. You can enhance focus and concentration, a self-care ritual to be healthier. You can refresh the mind to start mornings off right, or you can calm it down to get restful sleep at night. Better deal with emotional states like anger. I know what that's like. Stress, also. Frustration, not so much. Panic, things like that. If you've got a big discussion coming up with your boss, with a loved one, you can cultivate more patience with this app and the meditations. It's very easy to use and it's very inexpensive. So if you just go to simplehabit.com/welcome, you get a 7-day free trial. That's right. Free 7-day trial by going to simplehabit.com/welcome, or you can click the link in the episode description. There's so many aspects of this that are different from normal behavior. That it must have been, how long did it take you to be able to even register what had happened, in a sense?
Oh, I don't think it did for days.
Yeah.
I mean, I could, and then I went back and laid down. I didn't want to look in the mirror. I just wanted to escape for a few minutes and just lay down. I can't explain it. I was just so frightened. And then all of a sudden I hear a knock on the door.
Oh gosh.
And I'm frightened and I'm thinking, my God, there they are. So I go to the door and I look through the peephole. Well, heavenliest days, it's Norma. I completely forgot about her. And I opened that door and she grabbed me and I grabbed her. And I never cried so hard in all my life. We went back over to the bed and sat down and I told her what happened. And then she immediately got up and went to get ice from my mouth. I mean, I looked horrible.
So you have again, this is something people need to understand. You have a contemporary witness who was there as soon as possible and who also saw the physical damage. So
right.
People can't be like, oh, well, she was asking for it. No. She saw you hurt. She saw you a
Yeah.
complete mess. This is not,
Right.
because some people want to take cheap shots because they want to defend the Clintons to the death, no pun intended.
Yeah.
And they'll say, "Oh,
Right.
well, she should have known better. She's asking some man to." I'm sorry, I'm not trying to upset you. I mean, this is such
no.
you know what I mean?
No,
It's
it's
such a
okay.
sensitive issue. But then it's like this wasn't 10 o'clock at night. You guys were at a bar. Let's go back to my
No.
hotel room kind of situation where you could. This is. I want to talk about nursing homes at 8 a.m.
Right. Right. And I'll never forget, she was not only my employee and my director of nursing, she was my best friend. And as I sit there and tell her about it, she begins to cry too.
Oh,
It's
gosh.
just, yeah, it was devastating to both of us. But here we sit, and Norma says, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "I just want to go home." So she helped me change clothes, and and she got all of our stuff packed, and we drove home. I mean, we never went to the seminar. We
Yeah.
didn't have we couldn't, and thank goodness we didn't see anybody on the way out that that saw what I looked like. I was so ashamed. I mean, ashamed.
Well, tell me about that. Why? I mean, it's for nowadays. Thankfully, that still happens, but it's much less prevalent. That's
Yeah.
the female's response. But in the 70s, tell me what the atmosphere was like and why that would have been your response to that.
Oh my goodness. If a woman in the 70s allowed a man to come to her room, regardless of who he was, and anything happened, it was your fault,
Yeah.
not the man's, because you had invited him to your room. And I couldn't say, well, he manipulated his way to my room. No one would have believed me. He was about to be the governor of our state. And it's too unbelievable. It was unbelievable to me, Michael,
Yeah.
that it had even happened.
And you must be able to relate to how they felt because you saw him on TV. You saw how charismatic it was. So in one
Yeah.
sense, it's like, yeah, I don't blame you for not being able to wrap your head around this because it's so incongruous with this image.
Yeah, it was. And we talked, she would stop and get ice from my mouth. And we were both, I think she was right there with me, devastated.
Yeah. So from that point, but if someone's running for governor and he won, he became the boy governor of Arkansas.
Yeah.
What's it like seeing him on TV? I mean, he must have been everywhere in the news at that time. You can't escape him.
No, I did. And it was all I could do to put one foot in front of the other. So for the next few weeks, I didn't even go near the TV because he was on it everywhere. And there were so many things in my life I had to change. And then the other 4 people that I told were very close to me. And it was about 3 or 4 days before the swelling went down.
Oh my gosh.
And before I could cover all of the bruising with makeup, with makeup. And so there's people I had to tell. And my whole soul was just depressed. I mean, I was not the same person. And it took me weeks to be able to even smile again. I mean, at anything, I was just like a hurt animal.
Yeah. So was it Kathleen Willey that he did the same thing with the lip too?
No, it was the one that was Miss Arkansas, Elizabeth Grayson Ward.
Yeah. So what happened when this was all coming out during impeachment, and why it's so clear that your story is so credible? Both of you, who never knew each other, correct? Had never
Right.
met, had no relationship whatsoever, had the same exact thing happen, specifically biting down on the upper lip almost until it was bloody. Now,
Yeah.
it's not possible, from my understanding, for 2 women who have nothing in common to have that such a specific detail. I mean, that's how I knew. I'm like, all right, this woman's clearly telling the truth because there's no other way for there to have this be. And who was it? I believe one of the Congress people who was reading the evidence said, "Oh my God, that's his MO."
Yes, and now who was she? It
I
was a
don't-
woman.
It was a congresswoman.
But
I don't remember her name anymore, but that she was gasping at the time because it was so clearly. And here's the other thing. And I'm sure you agree. there's a big difference between, and I'm not excusing any behavior, of course, someone exposing himself to a woman, which is trashy and gross and whatever, and violent sexual assault. These are, and so when people dismiss him as being like, oh, he had an affair with Monica Lewinsky, that is not at all the situation you were in.
No. And it just devastated me. You know, there's so many things about my life, you know, that I had, just like my church service. I was Episcopalian. And if you went to the regular 11 o'clock service, they said, we pray for Bill Clinton, the President of the United States. Well, I didn't have to hear that at the 8 o'clock service. So, you know, I even had to switch my church services. So and severe panic attacks. I remember waking up in the middle of the night thinking I'm going to die and I just have to get outside on the porch. The panic attacks were terrible, but thank goodness they went away after a few years.
Oh, a few years. Yeah. Just a few years.
Yeah. It was debilitating.
So there's a whole other element of disturbingness to your story, which is when you met our first female president, the most qualified person ever run for president, Hillary Clinton. When I heard that, I remember back in the day, that was really a whole other level to this madness.
Oh, exactly. And just this morning, the Daily Mail made the comment that I continued to work in his campaign after the rape, and that was a lie. I called them and said, I can't be a part of this anymore. I didn't tell them why, but sure. I never worked in it. So, but prior, Michael, to the rape, I had worked in the campaign, and I had asked my dear friends, Betty and Buddy Criswell, to have a fundraiser at their home. They had the most lovely home here in Van Buren, and I had helped set that up. I completely forgot about it. The day of the meeting, Betty calls, and she said, did you have the list of donors, and what time will you be here? And I thought, my God, the fundraiser. And I said, Betty, I can't come up there at all tonight. And I said, but I can't be there for the fundraiser. I have something going on. I don't feel well. I don't remember what. And I said, but I'll bring you these. And I said, also, I found some checks in my van. When I was out campaigning and putting up yard signs, there was 3 or 4 people that gave me like little $10, $25 checks to take for the campaign.
Yeah.
So I also had those, and I'd forgotten about those. And so I told her, I said, I'll run up there about 30, 45 minutes early and give you these things, but I can't stay. That was a bad decision. Anyway, I run up there, and it was about 6:30, 6:15 in the evening. And I go in, give the checks to Betty, and then the lady from the state office was there, and I handed her the checks and gave Betty the fundraiser list, and that lady too. And I told her, I said, I'm sorry, I can't stay. So I started to leave, started toward the front door. Well, before I could get to the front door, here comes Charles Watts. Chuck Watts is what we called him. He's a local pharmacist. And he did not know about what had happened to me. But he was the driver from the airport to the Criswell home. And he comes rushing over to me, and he said, you're not going to believe this. He said, but the whole topic of the conversation from the airport was the Clintons asking me questions about you.
Oh,
and I
gosh.
thought, my God, they're here. I've got to get out of here. Well, I told Chuck, I said, I'm sorry, I've got to go.
Wait, hold on. When he said that to you, what was going through your head? I mean, that must have been terrifying.
I almost fainted. I thought, my God, they know. But I didn't really know if she knew at the time.
Right.
And I didn't want to see him. But anyway, here I am going to the front door. Here comes Hillary Clinton.
Did she have those big glasses on?
I don't remember, but
Okay.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so. And she comes straight for me. And as she's walking toward me, I think, my God, here comes that poor woman married to that monster, and I'm caught.
So you had sympathy
that's what I thought.
You had sympathy for
Yes.
her because she's like you, like you didn't know. You thought charismatic, cares about people, good Democrat.
Right.
Why would she know?
Yeah. And so She comes over, tries to take my hand, and she said, I just want to tell you how appreciative that Bill and I are for everything you do in this campaign. I could have nodded. I could have said thank you. I just had to get out of there before he came around the corner. So I turned and I'm getting closer to the door all the time. And then I feel somebody grab me from behind. I turn around and it's Hillary Clinton. And she has a death grip on my arm.
Oh my God.
And she pulls me down to her. And she has this ugly scowl on her face that you see so much. And she says, do you understand everything you do? And man, that's when I first became frightened of that woman. I jerked my arm from hers and I left.
You didn't even respond.
No, I absolutely felt like I'd been raped all over again.
Was it said in the context of a threat? Was that the tone?
Oh, yes. Yeah. And in fact, when Andrea Mitchell called and wanted to talk to me about that, she tried to twist my words. And I finally told Andrea Mitchell, I said, listen, lady, if you'd been standing in my shoes, you'd have been shaken in them. I said, that was a threat, and you can't tell me otherwise.
Yeah, it's one, if someone is telling you a story about, something, a conversation, you can rewrite it in your own head. But if you're standing talking to someone directly, it's really clear if they're joking or threatening or being cordial. It's not hard to determine what the tone is if someone is a conversation, especially if they're gripping your arm like that.
Oh yeah, she had a tight grip. It hurt on my arm. And I couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe it.
Soon after that, he was elected.
Yes.
Were you scared at any point that something else was going to happen to you? Or were you like, if I keep my mouth shut, I'm going to be fine?
I just thought if I kept my mouth shut, I'd be fine. I mean, they had control over my business. I probably was more as concerned about losing my livelihood as I was losing my life. And if that makes sense.
Of course. And so there is both the traumatic, emotional, kind of non-rational fear that he's going to come back and kill me, which, is not really going to happen. But there's also the very easily real fear that he's the governor. I mean, it'll take him a second to be like, let's put this lady out of work. And what recourse would you have then? Nothing. So he had that sword over your head the whole time. And let's also say that this isn't just a paranoid threat on your part. To remind people, when they came into the White House, one of the first things Hillary did, it was Hillary, she got the White House travel office staff fired. And this was a nonpartisan office. Their staff, they don't work Republican or Democrat. They're just like travel agents. They're there to help people get from one place to another. She made it out when this became a brouhaha that they were being fired because would you fire them? It's not like Secretary of State. She had this whole campaign that they were incompetent and this and that and destroyed these people's lives. And they were later vindicated because she said, quote, we need those slots for our people. So there was no compunction about getting rid of people in their way. When it comes to their attempt for power. And this is something that I think is widely acknowledged. I had Jessica Tarloff here a couple of weeks ago. She works for the Clintons, and she said, look, this is just politics. There is that ruthlessness. So even putting aside your assault, the fact that if you're just a troublemaker of any kind, even if your trouble's coming from truth, too bad, lady. You're going to be out of work.
Right.
And I think people understand in southern towns, Arkansas in 1980, 78, there is some of that boss hog element of, the politicians can work with the cops and they could do whatever the heck they want. You're not going to, especially in a one-party state like, Democratic Arkansas at the time.
Yeah. Oh, it was. You just didn't go up against the Clintons. From the time he became governor, he grew and grew and grew in power, and his organization grew.
Heshy socks, guys. You've seen me tweeting about them. You've seen me talking about them. I wear them to bed. They're my house socks. HESHISOCKS.com. The most comfortable kick-ass fashion socks for work or play. Here's why regular socks suck. They're thin and they give you no protection and they're expensive. It's like $30 a sock. I'm not paying that, and you guys know I spend money on clothes. HeshySocks.com and use promo code WELCOME30. You get 30% off their already cheap prices. They're cushioned in the foot, so it's like walking around with like pillows on your feet. I wear them around the house for that specific reason. They've got arch support in the center of the foot so they stay secure like an athletic sock, but they're made with high-end Pima cotton, which is highly breathable and absorbent if your feet sweat, and it's antimicrobial, so the feet don't stink. I wear them every day. They don't smell. They're comfy. They're nice. You got a bunch of different styles. You got the basics. You got the fashion. You can wear them with dress shoes. You can wear them with sneakers. If you go to HESHIsocks.com, HESHIsocks.com, Welcome 30 gets you 30% off the socks that I wear literally every day. Let me ask you this. So here, do you believe any of these rumors? There's a lot of crazy internet rumors about the Clintons, right? At a certain point, some of the stuff's nonsense. Do you think that they had anything to do with any of these people who, there's something called, I talk about this in my forthcoming book, The Clinton Kill List. All these people associated with them met weird and untimely ends. Do you think they had anything to do with that?
Oh, I think there's some that they've just thrown in, but yes, I think there's a few that you can definitely tie to them. I don't think they ever will be, but I've always believed that, Michael.
Yeah, because if someone is capable of just 8 in the morning, nursing home nurse, and just brazenly going into an assault, I mean, where is their limit?
Right.
Let
Exactly.
me ask you this in a broader context. I'm from Brooklyn. I have a lot of friends who are lefty, and the Kavanaugh thing was a big deal. And the point I made is a lot of men, I think, instinctively defended Kavanaugh because it was impossible, and we want to believe women, but it's impossible for us to relate to an assailant. I can't imagine doing that to anyone, or things that people are being accused of doing, like Harvey Weinstein, Bill Cosby. I can't relate to that thinking as a guy. So you want to think,
right.
Well, this can't be true because no one would act like this, even though we know psychologically that they do. So how would you tell people to speak to rape victims respectful? You know what I mean? It's kind of hard for. Do you see how it's a tricky situation?
Oh, yeah, exactly. And it's just like when the Jones thing came up, when he was running. Yeah, I felt like these women had the right to be heard. I think any woman who says she has allegations has the right to be heard. But she's also got to be investigated. She's got to be vetted. She's got to have some corroboration.
Yeah.
There was no corroboration with Dr. Ford.
Right.
I did not believe her. She may have had something happen to her, but in no way did it funnel back to Brett Kavanaugh.
So one of the other things that, again, in 1999, you sat down with Dateline. They interviewed you at length. You came forward, one of many women. So there's clearly a pattern of sexual misbehavior of some kind. And one of the things that the media had lied about at the time, and they still lie, they say, oh, he was impeached over sex. No, he was impeached over perjury and obstruction of justice. It's like saying
right.
A drunk driver is going to jail because he had a beer. No. It's not the beer that's the problem. It's the driving that's the problem. It's not that he, had sex. It's that he lied about under oath under an investigation. So they interviewed you. Tell me how they approached you and what happened with that interview.
You mean with the Dateline?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I had an ongoing conversation with Lisa Myers for probably a year prior to it, with her trying to talk me into it. And finally, she wrote me a letter, and she said, it's coming out. They've got the Yoakum letter, and Ken Starr is coming your way. And don't you want to tell this on your own terms instead of allowing the media to twist and turn it?
Wait, so let me ask you this. So basically, they're telling you, you don't got a choice. It's coming out either your way or our way, but your days of anonymity are done, lady, basically. So that's another kind of
right.
threat.
Well, no, it wasn't a threat.
Not from her,
but friendship.
But
yeah.
I don't mean from her,
yes.
but basically a threat to your privacy.
Yeah, exactly. And she said, wouldn't it be better to tell it in your own words? And that's when I decided, yeah, I'm going to do it.
Okay.
Now, my husband at the time was against it. And it was that's probably what broke up my second marriage, because he never wanted me to come forward because so much of what he predicted happened. The media turned on me. NBC stalled the interview, and so much happened. But we divorced probably 2 years after the interview, a little sooner. But anyway, yeah, I decided to do it. And then here comes the day, January the 20th, 99. Here comes all the crew and turns my home into a TV studio. And I went on tape for probably 5 or 6 hours.
Were you scared?
Oh yeah. When they first got here and we were going to start the interview, I told her, I said, I can't do it. I'm sorry. Started crying, went to the back, had to straighten up my makeup. And then, of all things, my husband comes in and says, you need to do this. I'm sorry, I didn't want you to, but yeah, you need to go ahead. They're here and it's time. So that's what made me go ahead and go through with it. Had to straighten up my makeup all over again. Got in and got set down and was just shaking in my boots.
Yeah. So what happened as a result of that interview?
Well, nothing for a while. Lisa said, well, we're investigating, and they had everything that they needed. I'd given them everything. They had found my registration for that day. They'd found it in the basement of the Arkansas Nursing Home Association. Down in some files, they found my registration form for that day. And they also discovered that Bill Clinton was in town that day. They talked to all of my witnesses. Everything that I said was true. But in 99, I remember, I told you about the little jailhouse.
Yeah.
I told her in the interview, I said, I remember looking down at that and it not having a roof on it. Well, by the time 99 rolled around, that building had been destroyed and torn down. But they found the blueprints of it. And sure enough, when they saw the blueprints of it, it wasn't that it didn't have a roof. It just had a cutout area on the top for visitors to exercise.
Okay.
So that's why I thought it didn't have a roof. But there's so many things like that they discovered within the first 2 or 3 weeks. But then they were supposed to show this during the impeachment. But it never happened. And I was getting angry. And then I remember one day Lisa calling me and she said, it's going to be okay. They're going to show it. I know they will because you've been completely vetted. And she said, but there's good news and there's bad news. And I said, okay. And she said, the good news is you're credible. I said, what's the bad news? And she said, the bad news is you're very credible. I didn't know what to do with that.
Yeah.
I'd never been interviewed. It just seemed to me like if I'm very credible, that's when you show it, and you show it in a timely manner.
So just to remind it, I mean, so I remember this at the time. I was talking to you before we went on air. They had this interview, they had it ready to go, and they said explicitly, and please correct me, that they sat on it until impeachment was done because the news didn't want to affect the political proceedings in Washington. Is that correct? And I remember hearing that and thinking to myself, wait a minute, you have news. Your job is news. You have a credible witness with corroborating evidence. It's very specific, nothing to gain, fought tooth and nail to keep from coming forward. This was a very long time ago, isn't trying to make anything out of it. And they're like, well, we're just going to keep this under wraps. When the news's job ostensibly is to reveal information that's pertinent. And the thing that really got me at the time was that lip biting thing. And I'm sorry to keep going back to that, but the fact that this is the same thing from more than one assailant, that is such pertinent information. I am shocked. Well, I'm not shocked, but it just shows the venality of the press.
Right. And I think probably what made them come forward was the Wall Street Journal. They came out with an article. Dorothy Rabinowitz came to my home and did an article on me, and it's called Juanita Broaddrick Meets the Press. That came out about 2 or 3 days before they decided to air it. But then they air it opposite the Grammys. Yeah.
So, but in their defense, I'll use that in a broad sense. I remember when this was first starting, they didn't even know how to report on Monica's dress. They didn't know what verbiage, right? Because they didn't know what verbiage to use. This was the late 90s. It's like, how do we talk about something that's so vulgar in a sense, that's so unpresidential and unprecedented? They didn't really know what to do. I think people forget how corporate the press is in their inclinations. They're like, all right, we can wrap our heads around this dress. Then here comes the cigar. They're like, okay, we don't know what to do with this, right? And then, forget the cigar. That's just maybe a little gross or kinky. Now we have full-blown violent rape. And I'm sure on some level, they're like, what do we, there's no blueprint for them because this is so unprecedented.
I know, but it made me, I mean, I came forward and I spilled my guts. It was the most difficult thing I've ever done. And I was assured, this is going to run in the next 10 days to 2 weeks. And that's why I did it, because I wanted this to come out during the impeachment.
Right. I mean, because how did you feel? I remember this also very vividly. When the Monica stuff first broke, they were trying to paint this young girl out as a stalker. That was the word they used, that she's stalking the president. Right. And I remember I was a kid thinking, how the heck, I'll use heck because you're from the South, we'll respect the language. How the, Miss Juanita, how the heck can someone stalk the president? If you are the Secret Service, is there any more protected person on earth? And a kid, this young girl, it makes no sense on any level, but that was what they were reporting day in and day out. And but for that dress, this would have, in history, he would have gone away with it and be like, oh, she's this crazy lunatic, and they'd be jokes about her weight and about her appearance. And she would become she was already ruined. I remember at the time, Monica said, how am I ever going to get married? How am I ever going to have a normal family? And you have to live it yourself because, like I said at the beginning, when people meet you, this is the first thing they think. And I'm sure that's not what you would like. You won't think, hey, my hair looks nice, or I have a good laugh. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And if it hadn't been for Linda Tripp, she wouldn't have saved the dress.
Yeah. And is there a sense of frustration that not only did he assault you, I can't even say that word because it's so disturbing to me. You know what I mean? He's, in a sense, publicly defining you. Like, you are known publicly as a function of this person. I mean, that's also got to be disturbing.
It's horrible. Yeah. And there's, it's like Leslie Milwee said, she's another victim of Bill Clinton. She said it just becomes part of your DNA and you can't shake it.
So are you, I mean, all four of you came during the presidential debates between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. Are the four of you like pals? Do you have like a Facebook chat group that you're all talking? Or like, what is your relationship with these other women? Kathleen Willey, Paula Jones. Who was the fourth one?
Kathy Shelton. She was the young 11-year-old that was raped, and Hillary defended the rapist.
And laughed about it. Yeah.
And laughed about it. Yeah. Kathleen Willey and I have been friends for a long time, and we speak every now and then. In fact, I've been trying to help her. She's going through a home foreclosure. Oh. And it's a horrible situation. But that was the first time I'd met Kathy Shelton. Okay. And then I had met Paula Jones the day before. I'd never met her before. And we will see each other in interviews and things like that, but we don't have a group or anything.
Okay. So
we're all very individual.
One of the comments that James Carville said at the time, which I'm sure you know where I'm going with this one, and Lindsey Graham quoted again just with utter disgust, when Paula Jones came forward. And the other thing is, all these women they have different stories. They're very specific in their incidents. They're not all saying the same thing, which also lends credibility. It's very specific. Paula Jones wasn't saying, that he did to her what he did to you. James Carville said, and I'm going to get the wording a little bit wrong, this is what happens if you drag $100 bill through a trailer park. You get people.
I thought it was $1 bill.
Oh, $1. Okay. Okay. Maybe
that's what I think. I think Lindsay changed it.
Okay. So yeah, but basically the point is, I don't even know what the point is, that like to use like this woman's trailer park trash, and how is she getting money? I was just the money. She was in it for the money and had nothing had actually happened. But you're the exact opposite. So recently there was a GoFundMe set up for you, which is a way to crowdfund and give money to people. Dr. Ford got a lot of money. Dr. Kavanaugh got a lot of money against your will again. And you told them to take it down.
Right.
Why did you make that decision?
Oh, I just think it takes away from my credibility.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how much money did they end up raising before you told them to take it down?
Oh, I have no idea.
Okay.
I think it was only A few hundred. I have no idea. But I took it down within 5 minutes. I mean, it
Oh,
was, somebody told me immediately, take it down.
so yeah, I
And I
mean,
told her,
and because there's so much vested in the Clintons, I mean, I see why you have to bend over backwards to be like, there can't even be the appearance that have
right.
any ulterior motive here, because otherwise people want, and I'm sure you want to, people want to believe you're lying. It would be easier for you if you were
Oh,
lying,
yeah.
because then it's like, hey, okay,
Oh,
it was so much easier.
yeah. And I think so many people do believe me, but they just can't go there.
Because my book was about North Korea, and one of the things that I find when I talk to people about is it's horrible, but they don't know what to do with this information. So
Yeah.
yeah, they believe you, but it's like, what do I do? I can't arrest him. I can't not vote for him. I know he's horrible, but now what? And it's hard, and for you too, the powerlessness that they feel, you feel times a billion, because you're watching this guy
Yeah.
become president, and there's nothing
Oh,
you
I
can do
know.
except live in fear.
Right. Now, there is a GoFundMe out right now, but it specifies that it's only for production of a documentary. I don't know if you've seen
I
that.
have not. I'll put a link to it in
Uh,
the show in the episode that
yeah,
people can visit. Okay.
yeah, yeah. And it has to do with Kyle Olson and the American Mirror. He's the one that did the Democrats movie for
Yeah, Diamond and Silk.
Diamond and Silk. Right. Okay. He wants to do a documentary on me. And if we can get it all filmed in time, but like I said on the GoFundMe, I say absolutely not one penny goes to me. It goes for the production of this documentary that we hope to get filmed pretty soon. And it will follow me, and my whole story will start in Little Rock at that hotel. And it will show in theaters in the exact city where Bill and Hillary Clinton are speaking on the night
Oh,
they
that's
speak.
wonderful. Definitely have that
Yeah.
link in the show notes page. So,
Thank you.
what was your were you getting a little bit? I don't know your personality that well. What was it like for you watching Hillary Clinton getting beaten by Obama and watching how miserable she was the whole time?
Oh, I supported Obama. I gave over 3,000 to his campaign in the primary because I did not want her. I couldn't stand the thought of her even being there. I even sent a letter to the editor, an open letter to Hillary Clinton when she ran for senator, and it was put on several of the internet sites saying why New York should not vote for this woman. Of course, it didn't do any good, but I still had my say.
Are you? I take a lot of pleasure in watching her nowadays because she seems to have descended into full blown madness. I don't think she's accepted 2016, and she never will. This is something she's been plotting for since, who
Right.
knows when. Who do you think, if you had to judge, and you don't obviously know them on a personal level, but you've kind of seen them firsthand in the worst possible way, who do you think is a more evil person, him or her?
Oh, I think it's her. I think that a lot of his assaults would have never taken place if she had just handled the situation in the beginning, even if she just divorced him and walked away. But she enabled one of the worst sexual predators of all time.
And then is a champion for women and women's rights are human rights and all that other stuff.
Oh, right, right.
So
When she first came out with that tweet that all sexual survivors should come forward and be believed and we're with you, that's when I came out of the shadows again. I could not stand that coming out of her mouth.
what was your reaction when he was elected president in 92?
Oh, it was horrible. Couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe after Jennifer Flowers came out that something wasn't done. And there's where you go back to the credibility. Of course, she had done these magazines and taken money. But listen, I was very financially capable of handling my own finances. And I don't know what I would have done had I been alone or had a child to raise and had no money. But I didn't have to face that.
Yeah. What was your reaction then on election night in 2016 when it was a given that Hillary was going to win? I mean, you must have woken up thinking it's a
Oh,
given this woman's going to be president now.
Exactly. In fact, my son had an election party, and I told him that I can't come. I don't feel well. But the truth was, this was so personal to me. I had to be alone.
Wait a minute. Wait, your son was going to have an election party for Hillary?
No, no, no. At his home to watch
Oh,
the party,
oh, okay.
to watch
Okay,
the
okay,
election,
okay.
and he wanted me to come over
Yeah,
and watch it with him. But like I said, it was too personal.
of
I had
course.
to watch this alone.
So, what was your
And
reaction?
I was, oh my God, about 2 o'clock. What was it? Wisconsin and
Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania and Florida. I got closer and closer to the TV, and then when it came through, he was going to be the winner. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that all of that was resting on my shoulders was gone, and
Do
I
you
felt so relieved.
do you think this in a way that this is you go to church? This isn't
Yeah.
a Christian concept, but do you think part of this is her karma?
Oh, I do. I do. And to this day, people in my church will say, well, you have to forgive him. You have to. And I said, I can't. There may be a day if he ever asks for sincere forgiveness, but I can't. I
I,
can't go there.
yeah, I don't understand. You're not Jesus. I don't understand the concept of forgiving someone who hasn't made amends or even attempted to make amends or even acknowledged any wrongdoing. Now, from my understanding,
Right.
he's never even denied your allegations. Is that correct?
No, no, not at all. He just refers it to his attorney
And what do the attorneys say?
that it's a lie. But so many times back then, they would say, uh, uh, President Clinton never raped or sexually assaulted Juanita Broaddrick, and I was Juanita Hickey at the time. So I think that's just one of their little mix up of words.
So let me play devil's advocate. What was your reaction when you heard that Access Hollywood tape with President Trump, talking about grabbing women and all that?
Oh, I was devastated. I was just absolutely horrified. And see, it came out before we went to the second debate. And my son was upset. He said, Mom, you cannot go to that second debate. And I said, those are words, Kevin. And I feel like I'm being given a very public forum to tell my story again. And yes, I'm going to go. Oh, it was upsetting. But it's like I said at the second debate. I said, Mr. Trump has said some pretty bad things, but actions speak louder than words. He said bad things. Bill Clinton raped me. Hillary Clinton threatened me. There's not any comparison.
So I'm getting corrections from the chat room. They're reminding me, because I'm not a Christian, that forgiveness of others is for your own benefit in Christianity. So I got that wrong. So,
Okay.
but at the same time,
Okay.
it's a big ask. I mean, this is such a traumatic
Oh, I
incident.
know.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine what it's
Yeah.
like walking in your shoes. Are
I
you?
need to,
Go ahead.
I need to tell you that I think my phone's getting low on power.
Well, that's perfect timing because we're time to wrap up. Miss Juanita, that was perfect timing. Thank you so much for
Yeah.
taking the time. You're such a pleasure. And I'm so glad you came forward is because it's so easy to dismiss some of these stories as, oh, she knew she was getting it into, was having an affair. That is to adults. That's fine. Even if it's an intern, you could wrap your head around it. This is a whole other level altogether. And it's specific, it's detailed, and you had corroborating witnesses at the time, and you fought tooth and nail to maintain your privacy.
Right.
And so I hope people will contribute to your GoFundMe. And thank you so much for taking the time.
Hey, thank you, Michael.
Okay, you have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. I'll see you all next week. You are welcome.